Thank you. Thank you, Bashka, and thank you, everyone. Good to see you. Also, nice to see some familiar faces from France. Um, I'm very happy to have this webinar here tonight and be part of this collaboration. Um, is everything working with the interpretation? Can you hear me well? Okay, I think it's going okay. Great. So I will start with my presentation. I will not talk longer than 30 minutes. If I go over time, please remind me. But yes, I think it's gonna be fine. So tonight, yes, I'm presenting the campaign or the initiative that I'm working for. We are called Soziale Wärmewende, a nice German word, which basically means social heating transition in English. We have started in 2023, but our aim is to connect the German climate movement with the tenant movement. And we currently have 8 local groups who are fighting for a social heating transition in several German cities. We have we are also networking with some climate NGOs and tenant associations. So we are trying also to build a German-wide network. And we have 2 paid coordinator positions, myself and my colleague Lisa. Here you find an overview of where we are active in Germany. You can see it's mainly Western Germany. So this part here used to be former Eastern Germany, and we have 1 local group in Leipzig, which we are very proud of. So building up structures in Eastern Germany is more difficult because also which is connected to the housing market in Germany, I will give you a little bit of an overview right now. Germany is a tenants country. We can say we are number 1. We have the number 1 percentage of tenants in Europe. 52% of the population in Germany rent. And as in most countries, I think, that have winters, buildings and heating and warm water make up 30% of CO2 emissions in Germany. So there's a lot to do and a lot that is not being done. The German housing market is peculiar in one regard, which I think is a bit maybe different to your context, which is that we have a large share of the housing stock in the hands of private companies, financial market actors, billionaires and millionaires, which is mainly the case in cities where it's quite lucrative to rent. So in Berlin, this share is 40%, for example, which is really a lot. And this is not only the rented building stock, but it's all buildings. Among all buildings where people live, 40% of them belong to private companies or rich individuals. You can see that this share is also quite high in other German cities. So this is a big issue for us. Who are these companies? Here you can find an example of 3 most important ones, but there are also more than them, but these are like really the main ones. Vonovia, which is active all over Germany, which owns more than 500,000 flats. But also LEG, which is mainly active in Western Germany, and Heimstaden is a Swedish company, and actually this number is all European flats, so not all of them are in Germany, but it's still like a huge player also in the German housing market. What does it mean for tenants if they live in these buildings? Here you can find an overview, an example of Vonovia and how the rent the tenants pay is actually being spent. You can see dividend payments. So this is the money that is directly paid to the shareholders. So shareholders, if they own a share in this company, so Vonovia is traded on the stock market, 43% of the rental income. So every euro that a tenant spends, 43% of this money goes directly to the shareholders and is not spent on anything else. Then you can see there is some return investment, and some interest rate payments, because also these companies have huge amounts of debt. So they also have to spend a lot of money on that. And then taxes, of course, is lower than 3%. And the management, including the maintenance, so everything that goes into the well-being of the tenants, or that the buildings are in good shape, is only 25% of the income. So what does this mean? You probably know it from your countries as well. Neglected houses, moldy houses, broken windows, elevators that are not being fixed for months, broken heaters that are off for weeks on end in the winter. So yeah, very bad situation for tenants if they live with these large corporations. Also, they are known for illegal rent increases. And what is quite important for also the talk tonight, they are known to use retrofits to increase the rents, and also for evictions. So that to increase the rents in such an amount that tenants are actually not able to pay for this anymore. So this is the situation we have in Germany. And now I would like to go a bit more into depth with what does it mean, rent increases after retrofits and renovations. So Germany, compared to some other countries, actually has rental protection laws that are okay-ish, I would say. If tenants know about them and if they have access to a lawyer, they do have quite some rights. So for example, rent increases are capped at 15% over 3 years, and also capped by the local average rent plus 10%. And we have so unlimited tenancy is the norm in Germany. So it's not that easy to kick a tenant out. This is where retrofits come into place, because retrofits enable the landlord to increase the rent much more than this cap. The current law says that 8% of the investment costs can be passed on to the rent yearly, capped at 3 euros per square meter for 6 years. Voilà. So what this means, I wrote you here an example. For example, if you live in a 50 square meter flat, this means a 150 euro rent increase per month. So it's really, I mean, for people who are already paying too much rent, who already don't know sometimes how to afford, like with the inflation, food and heating and everything, a 150 euro rent increase is impossible. It's impossible to pay this, or it just puts a huge pressure. This law also means that it's almost never warm rent neutral. So the savings in heating costs almost never offset this 150 euro rent increase, for example. And it means, a lot of tenants move out after, or even before the retrofit is being done. So that means that for us in Germany, this situation, it's quite hard to organize tenants for retrofits, or it's much harder than if we did not have these laws. So of course, we need to abolish them, which is one of our goals. But what can you do? I'm showing here an example of a tenants organizing project in 2018. This was in Kreuzberg in Berlin, one of the poorest neighborhoods. And this is the buildings. And this was Vonovia, which was then called differently, but they announced a retrofit, which would have led, if they had been going through with their original plan, to a 60% rent increase. So that means if, for example, the cold rent before was 350 euros, it would have meant an increase to 560 euros. And tenants organized, so they formed an initiative. They did a lot of, so that was really like structure-based organizing happening there. They formed a core group. They were very active with press work and media work, and they were able to also work together with the public authorities in Kreuzberg. And together they managed to lower the rent increase to 1.79 euro per square meter, which was still quite a lot of increase. So it was, for example, if the flat before was 350, it was 440 after the modernization, but still much better than this. And they were able to stay in these flats, which was also a huge success in this case. Another way that we are now organizing tenants with climate-related issue is heating costs and the resulting fossil fuel profits. This is a case from 2023, where tenants in several building blocks across Germany, which were owned by these large corporations, had extremely high additional heating bills. So the heating bills in these buildings were between 1,000 and 10,000 euros of heating costs, which was just gas. So also, yeah, these energy companies made a huge profit of destroying the climate. And what also happened in this case was that the company who wrote these bills was actually a subcontracting company of the landlord. So Vonovia actually managed to profit from the rent and also owned half of this gas contracting company and basically wrote the bills themselves. And this was also possible because the laws allow that in these contracting cases, the stock market prices for gas make up the heating costs. And you remember in 2023, we had an energy crisis at the peak. Stock market prices for gas were extremely high, and this is why these gas bills were so extremely high. So what did the tenants do? I'm going to give you now an example from an organizing project also in Berlin, in the south in this case, in Mariendorf, which is a building where around 1,300 households live. And there a paid organizer had already been active, organizing tenants around broken heaters and other maintenance issues. So when these bills came, the tenants were already prepared. And they organized the first assembly right after the bills came. So they were able to organize really quickly after these extreme bills came. And one important element also in this case was that there was a legal consultant from one of the tenant associations that said, you don't have to pay these bills. It's possible, also legally protected, to go on a heating cost strike. So the assembly decided collectively to go on heating strike because they had the legal backing that it was possible. They did door-knocking actions to sign the petition for the strike, which was also possible. So it can be a collective disagreement with the heating costs, and then you just need the signatures of all the tenants. And this meant that 650 of these 1,300 households joined the strike and withheld this money, which was really a huge amount of money that was not being paid to the contracting company and by result also to the landlord, to Vonovia. So these tenants, they are still on strike. And overall, we estimate that it must be more than 1 million all over Germany that is being withheld currently from Vonovia and these other landlords. So that's already a huge success. That's 1 million that is missing for them in their calculations. They also gathered a lot of press attention for this case. And they were able to make the landlord Vonovia to admit that it made mistake in these calculations. And it served also as a further scandalization of these business practices of the landlord. So we see this as a possibility to join climate and tenant struggles because, these are fossil fuel profits that are being made of tenants, and withholding this money going on heating cost strike also really means that, these energy companies cannot continue this business model like this. Our aim is also to support more tenants in doing so. And in the end, to also abolish this contracting model and to get a new regulation on district heating that means, yes, investments in green infrastructure, but no excess profits at the cost of tenants. this is one tenant from this initiative in Mariendorf in the south. She really has a great organizing career. She really started as a tenant affected by these heating bills. And now she's a speaker for the group. She was on national TV with the chancellor. This is our chancellor, or was our chancellor, Olaf Scholz. And they filmed her in her flat, and he had to look at the videos of her that where she made demands. And he had to answer to her. So that was really amazing. And also, she saw his answers and she didn't like them. She wasn't happy. So she went on social media herself, using like big social media accounts from one initiative here in Berlin. And she reacted to his answers. And she was like, Olaf Scholz, I did not like what you said there. This is bullshit. So yeah, this is, I think, a really great example of how tenants organizing is really empowering, and it enables people to do things they've never been able to do before or never thought was possible. Yeah, so we want to take these success stories of empowered tenants and wins, and we want to basically tell the climate movement to do tenant organizing. And to build up more of these initiatives, and to build up a network of tenant struggles all over Germany to fight for just and green heating for all. So this is what we are doing right now. So we have the organizing that is we are connected with organizing projects, and we want to start new ones. We have a press and social media part where we want to bring tenant stories on social media and in the press. But this is just starting right now. So Root, for example, that the tenant I showed before is a good example. And we do a lot of trainings online and locally. And yeah, as I said before, we are mainly recruiting climate activists to do this, because we see also that in Germany that the climate movement is a bit strategically lost, and we think that an alliance with tenants really is the way to go. This is an overview of the timeline where we are right now. We started in 2023 with a lot of gathering of information and really first trying to understand the German context and start to build the network. Then we did an interview project, which I will talk a bit about later. So we did this interview phase in 8 cities, which was also the start of our local groups in these 8 cities. This year we are evaluating the interviews, what came out of them. We are selecting buildings for organizing projects. We are starting doorstep talks in these buildings. And then later in the year, there will be first tenant meetings and first actions. So in the future, what we envision is heating cost strikes against contracting in several building blocks, pressure campaigns for social ecological modernizations, retrofit campaigns, and a nationwide pressure campaign, PR campaign, to change the necessary laws. This is a bit how we are working. So we are recruiting our volunteer organizers, mainly in the way that we go to events, we speak at workshops, we go to conferences, but a lot is actually also mouth to mouth. So groups we are working with already, or individuals, give us the contacts of other interested people, and then we have a talk with them and see if they might be interested in joining. Then we do onboarding. So we have one-on-one talks with the prospective organizers about their motivation and about their resources. And the first step usually is organize an interview action in your city, first doorstep interview action, or more of like informational event on the heating transition. That can also be sort of like an onboarding process. And then we have consolidation and training. So we try to go more in depth with the local groups. They do more interviews on the doorstep. We give them first workshops on organizing skills. We want to visit them and do strategy days with them. And we want to do a skillshare with tenants on the heating cost strike with these tenants who are already doing this. And explore neighborhoods for new organizing projects to then start the tenant organizing in the chosen neighborhoods with either a heating cost strike project or a retrofit campaign. And then you probably know the drill. Do first door knocking actions, find the core activists, build the core group, start the actions. So our interview project has been quite useful for us as an onboarding project. So we do doorstep message testing, which means that we have a message, which is a short text that is being read out at the doorstep. And we then ask tenants what they think about it, if they find it convincing, if they would sign a petition with this content. And the goal is, for once, develop unifying communication on climate tenant issues. Because in Germany, these things are really always pitted against each other. So we want to find a way to communicate about them that makes sense for tenants. But it's also a means for us to train climate activists in doorstep talks. So to really get them to get to the doors. Because a lot of activists actually have a lot of hesitation when it comes to going to the doors. And this interview project is sort of like a low-level entry point to do this. And the means of the interview project is also to identify buildings for organizing, for where we want to do future organizing projects. Here is an example of a message that we tested at the door, and I'm just gonna read it out to you. Whether our parents come from Bottrop, Damascus, or Kiev, we all need homes that protect us from the heat in summer and keep us warm in winter without wasting energy. Unfortunately, our homes are in a poor state. The windows are broken, the walls are not well insulated, and the facade is crumbling. We heat out the window. But if we demand that they be modernized, we risk a permanent rent increase. Why? Because the law allows it. Marco Buschmann is the Minister of Justice and could change the laws, but he refuses. It can't go on like this. We are joining forces so that the government passes better laws. Landlords must modernize our homes sensibly without increasing our rent, so that we can all live warm and healthy. So you see here, the unifying part is really that we also speak to several identities and relate to a shared class value. So this is really the sort of like the construction of a unifying message. And here we try to state what is the problem, who is responsible, and what needs to be done, and to give a vision of a future that is better. So we tested these messages, and now in the first local groups, they went from message testing to organizing. And here I brought you an example from Berlin in Reinickendorf. The landlord is Heimstaden, so one of these large companies that I showed you before. The first interview action was in October 2024. And there, the people who did the interviews also discovered that actually there's a lot of issues with bad windows and air draft, so a lot of heat that is being lost through windows and not badly insulated walls. The houses in general are very badly maintained. High heating costs are resulting. And a specific problem also in this neighborhood is that there's a lot of short-term rental contracts. So the organizing team that formed from this is a climate group from the expropriation campaign that we have here in Berlin, the Right to the City campaign, and Ende Gelände. I'm not sure if you are aware, if you know Ende Gelände. This is sort of like a civil disobedience mass action group from Germany that they blocked the coal mines in with these masses, and now they are starting to join organizing teams, which I think is a really great development and a huge success, I would say. And the plan is to organize for a retrofit without rent increase. So this will be a first try to really proactively organize for retrofits, which we are. So yeah, this is sort of one of the first times it's being done in Germany, and we are not sure how it will work or if it will work, but we want to try because yeah, we think it's important. And so yeah, the first assembly will take place in April, so already in a few weeks. Okay, I have 5 more minutes, I think, and so I will close with some reflections and lessons learned. What do we think we learned from trying to build up a nationwide network and structures with paid coordinators? So first, I think I want to talk about some challenges. Yeah, I think what has come across now is that the legal situation in Germany makes it difficult to organize for energy retrofits, and also really again and again pits social issues and climate issues against each other. And this is just a huge challenge that we face. Another challenge that we have is that different from our comrades in France and in Belgium, we don't have a tradition of tenant unions in Germany. We have a tradition of tenant associations that have a lot of members, but no basic democratic structures, and are not really organizations that are oriented towards a confrontation with the landlord or a collective struggle, but really individual legal consulting. So this is a challenge because we are not sure what kind of organization we can build in Germany. I think there's some people, there are already groups organizing for tenant unions, but this situation just makes this a lot harder of a process. And we need to really reflect and think about how we can do this sensibly so that we have an organization that actually makes sense in Germany. Another struggle that we have, I think, because also Germany is very federal and very locally organized, that we as tenants are not really able to act on a national level yet. And we have not been able to put pressure on the national level yet. And we hope that by building a sensible organization, this will make it easier. But this is something that also we will hopefully see in the future. Yeah, then this question of, is it even possible to organize for retrofits in Germany, I think is also something that we need to find out now. And another struggle we are having is fundraising and paid positions, which is just, yeah, very hard to have these paid positions, but have so much financial insecurity. I think what worked well for us, what I can say, is running against a lot of walls. So really just trying out a lot of different things and seeing what works, and also accepting that a lot of times things that you try don't work out. I think this really was a lesson we had to learn, but I think if you accept that, or for us, accepting that just made it a lot more fun. For us, the interview project as a shared low-level practice really worked well as a founding moment also for our local groups. And we have really seen what difference it makes if you have paid coordinators, or if we are able to do this work really on a paid basis, because we can do the onboarding with one-on-ones, we can have regular meetings, we can go visit the groups when it gets difficult. So mainly we went to the local groups and organized the first interview action together with them, for example, which I think makes it a lot easier for new groups to start. We can come and visit them for the local strategy days. So all of these things made it, I think, were extremely useful for us. We are collaborating with some tenant associations, and that is, I think, also a success, because most of them are now realizing that you need collective tenant struggles in order to be able to change things. So I think the tenant associations are moving and are changing, and I think that is also a success of the tenant movement and of tenant organizing, and to show that it works. And I think in the future, we will also see how this collaboration will look like and how these associations will also transform themselves. And then, yeah, I also wanted to stress that this international collaboration is really amazing, and it just gives a lot of hope to see that many people in our comrade countries are fighting the same struggles and are working on the same issues, and that we are in this together. And that's just very great. Yeah, that's it from my part. Thank you for listening. Here's our contacts if you want to reach us. We are happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Leonie. I'm gonna stop